Hi everyone, my name is Emily and I'm the Young Adult Librarian at the Rock Island Public Library. And today I'm here with a special bonus Halloween book talk, and I'm going to tell you about a book called Daughters Unto Devils. So this is one of my favorite books for this time of year, and it's historical fiction. It's taking place in the past. And this book is about the Werner family. Amanda Werner is 16, and she's the main character here. She lives in a cabin with her family. And this family is living on a mountain. They live kind of out, this is in the western United States, so probably not very far west of here necessarily, but this is the 19th century, so this was kind of considered, bordering on the frontier. There weren't a lot of towns. There weren't a lot of, towns or cities or people living in this part of the world. But this family living on their mountain, there's no other neighbors nearby. Like, their cabin is pretty isolated. The closest town is a couple miles away. And this is fine, when the weather's nice. Most of the year, the family spends most of the day outside. They're working. They've got a little bit of a farm going. They have enough food to feed themselves, but they also trade in town for other goods that they can't make themselves. And, Amanda helps her sister Emily take care of the younger kids. They have two younger siblings at the start of the book, a boy and a girl. But the problem for the whole Werner family is when winter comes. And when winter comes, let's see, there's the mom and the dad, and there's 4 kids. And over the winter, when this book is starting, the mom has a baby. And this baby is deaf and blind. And, once they realize this, they're going to take care of her as best they can, but there's no doctor nearby. And because this baby has no other, way of communicating at this point, she's a baby, she doesn't know how else to get across what she needs, so this baby cries. And lots of babies cry. If you've heard of colic, that's a thing where babies just cry a whole lot sometimes, and, you can do your best to soothe them, but they're gonna keep doing what they do. And the problem for the family, it's winter. The cabin in which they live, imagine the room you're in now. Whatever room you're in, I'm in kind of a bigger room, and this is probably too big to imagine, but typical classroom size or typical room in a house, just average size room. That's about how big the cabin is. And if you're one of 7 people trapped in this cabin for months with a crying baby who cries most of the day and night, that's a lot. That's a situation you might not want to be in. But, there's several feet of snow outside. You have nowhere to go. You can't get out. You're going to go out to use the outhouse. I was going to say restroom, but no. Outhouse. It's a hole in the ground. That's what you're doing. And fine, you need to get snow to melt to have water. But otherwise, you're not going anywhere else. You're just there all the time for several months. Because, again, you're on a mountain, and so there's a lot of snow. Basically, October, November, December, January, February, March, okay, it's spring. So you might have a solid 6 months there where you're just stuck. And this is the case for Amanda and her family. The book, the way it tells the story is you have Amanda in the spring and kind of reflecting on the events of winter. And one of the worst things that happened was the night, kind of, I think it was mid-March, when finally everybody was asleep, even the baby was asleep. And Amanda gets up one night. She's enjoying a rare moment of quiet. And what she does is she goes to a window and she's looking out. And she can see in the distance, she's looking at another mountain. Their cabin is on one mountain, this is another mountain. There's just trees, there's not another house. She's just looking off into the forest. And she's thinking, okay, this has been really rough, but it's the middle of March, it's gonna warm up soon, and the snow's gonna melt, and we're gonna be able to go into town. We're gonna be able to be away from each other for a little bit, which we all need. We could all use a break. But as Amanda looks out at the mountain, she sees something standing in the trees. And at first she thinks, oh, is that a deer? Oh, that's so beautiful, this deer standing in the moonlight. But the longer she looks at this thing, it's far away. It's like over a mile in the distance, like up on this ridge. But, as Amanda considers it, she looks and she sees, as her eyes kind of adjust to the light, the horns on this thing aren't right. Like, not for a deer. Like, there's something else going on. It's not antlers, it's horns. Also, this isn't something that appears to be standing on 4 legs. Whatever it is, it's standing on 2. And as she watches this thing, she hears this voice. And it's very quiet, but what it says, as she's looking at this thing, she realizes that it is looking back at her. And the voice in her ear says, I am coming to eat your soul. So, Amanda screams and wakes up her whole family and explains that the devil's on the mountain and he's coming to eat her soul. Well, her parents, they're not thrilled about being awakened. No one is, but they say, no, it's just cabin fever. Like, the devil's not on the mountain. You were seeing things. It was just, no. You're imagining this. It's not real. But, Amanda's family is deeply religious. This is, it's the 19th century. And, Amanda's dad, he's not happy with this situation. He understands, okay, like, this cabin isn't big enough for my whole family anymore. And frankly, this wasn't a good winter for anybody. This was hard for all of us to be inside for so long with, this new member of our family who was crying, the baby. So, what he decides, he talks to people in town. And he decides, okay, I've heard, from talking to some folks, that there are unclaimed cabins down on the prairie. There are cabins that people built. And then they decided, well, this wasn't right for me and my family. I think, I'm going to move further west or whatever, for whatever reason. So, it's agreed. Okay, we're going to move down the mountain. We're going to claim one of these unclaimed cabins. It's going to be bigger and better. And, this will be a much better fit for our growing family. Well, Amanda, she still isn't convinced that what she saw wasn't real. And what happens, in the spring, again, she tells you about what happens in the winter, but in the spring, you learn that she starts meeting with this boy from town, and, they become romantically involved, and Amanda doesn't tell her family, because again, this would be frowned upon, she's not going to marry this boy necessarily, or at least that's not the plan initially. But when she gets pregnant, then she says, this is what's happened, I think we need to get married. And the boy says no. And so, for Amanda, this is a very difficult situation to be in. She tells her sister Emily. Emily's a year younger than her. And she, neither of them know what to do. They can't tell their parents. Emily is legitimately concerned that her dad would kill her for this, because he would see it as a very sinful thing to do. So, Amanda, as the book is going on, she's worried about, okay, what am I going to do? How long can I hide this? But as this is happening, as she's worried about this, she still has to help the whole family, prepare for this move. They're going to move down off the mountain. So what they do is they have to pack all of their belongings into a covered wagon. And Emily and Amanda, as the 2 oldest kids, they can't even ride in the wagon. There's not enough room. So it's the mom and the dad, they're steering the wagon. The 2 younger, brother and sister, and the baby. This is 5 people in the wagon, 2 people walking. So Amanda and her sister Emily have to walk down a mountain and then walk across the prairie. And they can see, there are cabins. They see them in the distance. And it seems like, wow, this really could be a better situation. Especially when they get to the cabin and there's a water pump outside in the yard. Before this, they had to go to the creek to get water or melt snow for water. Now they have a pump in the yard? Seems pretty good. But then they go inside the cabin. And inside the cabin, they find blood all over the floors and all over the walls. Now, Amanda's dad makes the choice that this doesn't bother him. He decides, okay, look, this cabin's been abandoned for a while. Some wild animal must have gotten in and killed something. You know, a bobcat ate a jackrabbit or something, made a mess. It's fine. I'm gonna scrape the blood off the walls, you know, we'll clean this up, it'll be fine. But, you know, Amanda is not so sure. And remember, Emily is still, like, helping her keep the secret of she is pregnant. Like, Amanda has this baby on the way. Like, she's not showing it. It's not, like, you know, neither of her parents have noticed any difference. And, I mean, Amanda and Emily, like, they mostly don't talk about it because Amanda, she just doesn't know what's going to happen next, and she's scared. But what ends up happening is one night she goes outside, and this happens, you know, she doesn't, no one else is around when this happens. But she has a miscarriage. And, I mean, certainly this could be for lots of reasons, because of stress and malnutrition. Again, it's the 19th century. We didn't know a lot about what people need when they're going to have a baby. And also, you know, the whole walk down the mountain and across the prairie, that was like a strain on her body. So Amanda is very sad. You know, she's heartbroken. She's lost a baby. But at the same time, I mean, a part of her is relieved, if I'm being honest. And, you know, she says this in the book, like, well, if my dad had found out about this baby, he would have killed me. So I'm gonna have a burial. I will do this by myself. It's nighttime. No one will ever know. It's dark. No moonlight. Buries, you know, what was going to be her baby. And she tells Emily. And Emily is also, you know, she's very sympathetic. She's like, I'm so sorry that this happened. But at the same time, we didn't know what else could have been done. I mean, I'm so sorry, but at the same time, you know, I think this is, in a way, a blessing. But remember that they're in this new cabin and they're trying to, you know, make it a home. And they've unpacked their things. They've cleaned the blood, the mysterious blood, out of the cabin. And one night, Amanda's thirsty. It's the middle of the night, so she's going to go out and get a drink from the water pump. And when she does, you know, she gets her drink and she's like, wow, this is so nice. You know, the creek. There's like a forest nearby with a creek, but it's nice to not have to go there every time you want a drink. But she notices, while she's outside, there's something standing in the tall grass. Something in the tall prairie grass. And at first she thinks, oh, it's like a jackrabbit or something. But it's not shaped like that. In fact, whatever this thing has, it has glowing eyes. And it's shaped a lot like a baby. So, Amanda is terrified because she thinks, oh no, the devil on the mountain has followed us down the mountain. And, I mean, what's it doing? Is it like in my baby's body? Is it coming after us? Well, yes. But it doesn't stay in that body long. Like, whatever this thing is, it's looking for a better body. And, you know, Amanda tells Emily this, but again, her sister's like trying to reassure her and trying to say, look, there's an explanation for this. You're under a lot of strain and stress. You just had a really traumatic thing happen to you in losing this baby. So, I mean, I can't believe this really happened. It's gotta just be your imagination. And Amanda wants that to be the truth. Like, she wants to believe that, oh yeah, all these terrible things that I'm seeing and experiencing, you know, I'm seeing what I think are demons, and, you know, just there are some odd sounds happening. I want to believe that these are things that I could explain away by just saying, oh, you know, yes, I've had a traumatic year and things are going to get better. That's what Emily tries to reassure Amanda of in this book. Like, look, things have been hard, but they're going to get better. And, I mean, if this were not a horror novel, that might be the case. But of course, things just keep getting worse. So, one night, everybody wakes up in the middle of the night because there's this horrible screaming. And it's the baby of the family, who is deaf and blind. She is covered in ants. And again, she's a baby. Like, anybody in this situation would be screaming, but you know the difference. Like, you know the difference between a baby who's like crying and upset and just like screaming for dear life. And, you know, this is a horrible sound. The family all wake up, you know, they gotta like light a lantern and see that, oh no, you know, this baby's been bitten by all these ants. Where do they come from? So, luckily, over there in the forest by the creek, there is a doctor and his son. They've got their little homestead. And the dad of the family, you know, Mr. Werner, takes the baby. He's like, okay, I'm gonna ride over to the doctor's house. You know, he's gonna fix her up, she'll be fine. And, whatever happens, I'm gonna come back by morning to tell you what's going on. But of course, morning comes and he doesn't return. And Amanda and Emily are starting to worry at this point about their mom's increasingly erratic behavior. Like something's going on with her. And, one thing she does, even though it's summertime at this point, she builds up the fire. She really builds up the fire in the cabin. We gotta get warm. Let's warm up, kids. And it's like, Mom, we're gonna go outside. We'll be back in a bit. And so Emily and Amanda decide, finally, we gotta go see what happened to Dad. And, eventually they find out what happened to their dad and their baby sister, and it's not good. This is one of those books where, there is something supernatural happening. For a lot of the book, you could totally go along with Emily and say, oh, no, there's a rational explanation, except there's not. By the end of the novel, it's clear that, okay, something is hunting this family. And, it will do anything to get them. It's just, this is a book where it's not very long, but it packs a lot of horror into the pages. And, as you follow Amanda, and eventually, she and Emily, their only goal by the end of this book is to save their little brother and sister, because the other members of their family, various things have happened to them, including, this is kind of a spoiler, but if it tips the scales for you, people get eaten by pigs in this book. That's a thing that happens. So, basically, this is a novel about fear and devils, literal ones. But it's also a story about how scary things can get in reality when people are isolated, and when people, especially women, are punished or not believed when they try to talk about and survive trauma. So overall, just a very good, very scary book. Thanks for watching. I will see you again soon, and happy Halloween.